We're distributing that data inside the restaurant about you as a guest to all people in the restaurant. And that allows anyone in the restaurant, waiter, manager, owner, chef, to recognize you when you enter the door.
Welcome back to Heja Framtiden, the Swedish podcast on the future. I'm sitting here over a link with Zaedo Musa from Copenhagen.
Hi, Christian.
Startup entrepreneur, co-founder and CEO of something called Superb within the very interesting segment called Guest Experience Management. Can you please tell us a bit about how it all started and what you're aiming to achieve with your company?
Yeah, of course. And thank you for that nice introduction. It was spot on. So Superb is essentially introducing guest experience management as a new category for restaurants, which came out of the need for connecting the data or connecting the dots around guests and the business in the restaurant. I was part of early team behind Jonah Juice, where we found out that giving a great customer experience, a great personal experience equals revenue, equals customers coming back. I think a lot of people would say that's a no-brainer. But it's not that simple. And then after Joe, I looked at the restaurant industry, and I had this expectation that they already had systems in place, CRM systems that would collect and aggregate information about their guests, so that they could actually use it in practice to upsell, to greet people, to ask them how things are doing at their job, or remember conversations they had from last time. But then I realized that that was actually not the case. They were still with pen and paper or very legacy systems that was not connected. And Superb's intention is, and what we have done is we've introduced the world's first all-in-one. So we are moving away from systems that are just integrated to one platform that is built together. And that essentially will be the start of data collection for the restaurant.
You've been around for 4 years now? Since 17, right?
Yeah, so actually 3 years, only since December 17. Yeah.
And you initially target high-end restaurants in order to gain some traction within that segment. And I saw that you're already in 12 markets. Is that
That's
right?
correct. Yeah, that's correct. So actually the story was that we grew to over 25 markets initially. We wanted to build a born global company, but also realize, for the sake of again the customer experience and the quality, we needed to cut down and really be present in the specific markets and have great customer support and so on. So now we are back to, I would say, fewer markets and targeting the mid to high end segment of restaurants.
Yeah, and Sweden is one of them, right? Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Italy, you said was your core markets at the moment.
That's correct.
And I think it's kind of interesting because, as you pointed out in the beginning here, it's kind of ironic that these people, these entrepreneurs, these visionaries have so much passion for guest service and management, but they don't have a system in place to ensure that. It's just face-to-face interactions.
Yeah.
And when the person is not present one day, you're not a preferred customer or VIP client anymore. You're just a regular guy walking into the restaurant. So it seems like there's a huge demand for this.
And if you think about it, it's actually pretty shocking, right? Because the restaurant industry might be the first industry of its kind that was actually using what we today call mainstream data, right? It's like personal information about people has always been noted by restaurants. But we are talking about an industry which is so underserved in terms of technology. we're talking about an industry where that has been dominated by companies and platforms that wants to do everything. Like they want to make an app for guests, but they also want to be the best at making the software for the restaurants in the back end, right? But you simply cannot champion both sides, and I think that's also the thesis that Superb is built after. Champion one side and do it right.
So how does it work when a restaurant approaches you or you approach a restaurant? What is the implementation process? Do they get rid of other systems or do you add another layer?
That's a good question, and actually, it differs from restaurant to restaurant. In most cases, I would say we take up around 80% of the restaurant's total tech wallet size, right? So the amount of technology they use. And in most cases, depending on if you buy our product standalone or the all-in-one platform, we replace either one, two, three of your products, or we replace all. A big part of the value proposition is actually by going all in one, you also have one platform to operate from, one platform to let your team become familiar and better within. It's just like, having one place you need to contact for support seems like the best option for me instead of four different companies, right?
So you handle all kinds of payments as well?
Yeah. So the thing is, when restaurants choose all in one, they really get all in one. We give them an omni-channel experience of their data, an omni-channel experience of their payments. So it's actually not just the owner or that we provide to and give analytics to. It's not only the restaurant manager or the waiters. It's actually also the accounting. So I tend to say you as a restaurant have data streams and payment streams, revenue from selling gift cards, tickets, in-store payments, and all other online payments from different providers, and you need to hunt reports from all these providers. But you now can have this omni-channel experience of all your information in one stream. And that again makes it easier, cuts costs, and ultimately gives restaurant more control.
And do you actually collect the payments to you as well and then pay it out? Or how does it work?
No, actually, we don't touch the restaurant's money. All payments are processed directly by the restaurant. So, and what we do is we essentially just building the technology around it that makes it easier to be a restaurant. So one example is we have next day payouts. Restaurants need liquidity; they need it fast to pay their bills, right? And we allow them to take any payment method in the world. Where if you go to other suppliers, you can have some, or you need to pay extra for others. Here it's just like it's clean cut. You pay one fee, you have all cards, and you have payouts next day. It's not much to discuss if you get what I mean.
Yeah. And I mean, from the customer side, how can the guest experience be elevated or augmented with Superb?
So imagine yourself going into a restaurant. You've been there, let's say you've been there 3, 4 times. And what we do is we are habitual people. We go to the places we like the most, right? We feel most comfortable in. You already now unconsciously have an expectation that they will recognize you, or they will be familiar with which type of wine you drink, or which coffee you always drink, and so on and so forth, right? Those things really matter to you. The problem is, if you notice, it's usually just one or two people that remembers that. So what we're actually doing is we're distributing that data inside the restaurant about you as a guest to all people in the restaurant. And that allows anyone in the restaurant, waiter, manager, owner, chef, to recognize you when you enter the door. So we present them with a picture of you, your name. We present them with information about when were you here the last time, what did you drink, what did you eat, how much do you actually spend, and that allows different people to actually personalize the experience. So instead of serving you the actual same menu every time, they can prepare before you arrive on a different kind of menu, right? Recommending you the right wine and so on and so forth.
So they would know that I'm vegan with hearing impairment, and they can place me at a certain table, and they can provide me with a different menu. And they know that I don't drink, so they will provide me with another alternative there.
Exactly. And especially the last point there, right? They know you don't drink or they know your allergies. Why should you always say that to them? Why can't they aggregate that information, remember that about you? So the next time you come, they might have prepared a new non-alcoholic beverage for you, right? So we're talking about, hyper personalization here in the industry where it matters the most, right?
And what about the integrity side? Can you, as a customer, opt out of this if you don't want to be recognized?
Exactly, and what we are doing, and recently, we got asked this by someone very well connected to the whole GDPR question, right? And what we are saying is that we're building a platform now that allows the guests to see everything we know about them when they actually make the reservation. So whether you book on the restaurant you've been to or other restaurants that you haven't been to, it's up to you to share or delete your profile as you wish. What we are saying is by sharing that profile, you can actually customize the experience and have a more personal experience, right?
Okay, so it's more from the booking perspective. But if I just walk into a restaurant, will they have my information then, or will they have to look up? I mean, next step is facial recognition technology, right?
Yeah, that would be amazing. A camera in the door that scans you before you enter.
Mm.
Yeah, amazing.
So, what about after the visit? Do you follow up with the feedback as well?
We do, and also we both follow up with feedback. And when you go into the actual restaurant, they actually don't really recognize you, obviously, as a walk-in today. But what we are doing is we're trying to build innovation without face recognition that can somehow recognize you by, for example, your credit card. When you actually pay the bill, we store that information for the next time you visit the restaurant, right? And this is ways that we are trying to get closer to our mission of connecting the world to make every person known, right? I think that's the essential here.
And you decided to grow during the pandemic. Was that an easy choice for you?
I would say during the pandemic we were standing, across two choices like any other company, right? Most companies, from what I could see, initially chose the path of closing down and sending everyone home and trying to cut and save money as much as possible to survive the pandemic, right? I mean, for Superb, we've always been on the edge, right? If you get what I mean. It's a startup that have become a scale up and now a company, and we live of taking chances, right? We live of being faster than everyone else. So what we did was instead of wrapping things together, and we decided to essentially build a story internally that we called "This is the perfect storm." This is the perfect storm for us to actually grow and use the space that is completely open now that nobody's using, right? And that was the first assumption, and then we found out, do you know what? The perfect storm is also there for our customers in the restaurant market. Now they actually have the time to reconsider their tech stack, like go from fragmented tools that are not integrated, that do not collect information, to an all-in-one that does exactly the opposite, right? A lot of them found out, wow, we have to apply for support from governments and so on and so forth, but we don't have all our data collected anywhere, right? So they simply didn't have any of that under control. And I think that is the story that we went out and told restaurants, you need that, right? You need different revenue touch points to actually offer your guests an opportunity to buy and interact with you online. And that made us grow over 100% since the first lockdown, and I would say that's pretty successful, and also raise a Series A round from Kinnevik, right?
Okay, yeah. And you also have a no-show policy that you've implemented into the system. How does that work?
So we started doing that actually. I think maybe as the first company in Europe back then when we started in 17, 18, right? Was that we introduced a feature that will basically require a guest to add their credit card or payments card when they were making a reservation, and that was actually pretty controversial back then. All the competing systems on the market in different countries were saying this is illegal, and Visa and MasterCard and all the payment schemes won't approve this, and blah blah blah. They basically said that, all of them said that across, yeah, I think it was like in 10 markets where we heard that from local suppliers. But what happened 6 months after, they all started doing this exact same, and it solved a super important problem, because this was controversial, obviously, for the guests, right? Now I have to put my payments card in when I make a reservation. But 12 months after, it became so normal that we saw more and more restaurants started actually adding this as part of their guest experience, their booking experience, right? And that also gave restaurants more security, right? When you actually book at a restaurant, it's harder to make a no-show, and it works in a preventive way. Less no-shows, more guests.
I saw somewhere that many restaurants went from 20% or something down to 1%.
Yeah, yeah. And that was pretty remarkable. And I would even say in many cases, it went down to 0%. You seriously saw that guests that I would assume were always making, traveling to a certain city and booking at 10 different restaurants on the same night, and then canceling half of them and no-showing the other half, and ending up going to one, obviously. That stopped from one day to another when restaurants would implement this feature, right? And it also created some kind of, remember, we're working with the mid to high end segment of restaurants, right? And most things we are building and most things we are doing works exactly and specialized, like really specialized for that type of restaurant. And that was beautiful to see how it could have so much impact on their business.
And is it up to the restaurant to charge a no-show fee?
It is actually. So obviously there are some local recommendations from here and there. Like, for example, you should only charge what the actual menu lost was, and so on, right? And we are part of giving those recommendations to restaurants. We explicitly also tell them it's not fair to put a no-show fee way higher just to punish a guest. That's not the objective of it, right? It is to make sure that you can charge what you lost.
Yeah. I also think, because I've written some about the hospitality industry during the pandemic, and it's kind of interesting to see how some restaurants have been working more with revenue management to actually increase profits and revenue, because they maybe have two different sittings, they have a fixed menu, they can charge more. They maybe go from a buffet style serving to a la carte menus. This is, of course, not the high-end restaurants that you're talking about, but still, there's a sort of bigger interest, I think, in these kinds of questions, and many have proven to be more successful when they have sort of tweaked some of their tools within this segment.
Yeah.
Can you agree with this?
I totally agree. And I think that's also super important, right? Because just like 2 years ago, restaurants were not represented online. I mean, how crazy is that? And I think what we have been telling them is you need to have a platform in place, whether it's Superb or any other, that can offer you some revenue touchpoints online that can really elevate your business, right? And your brand also. And what we saw is when they start implementing a gift card feature, doing prepaid dinners on days that were a bit slower, upselling features in the actual reservation flow, all of those things are part of actually making the online platform a marketing engine for the restaurant and not just a booking platform.
Yeah, definitely. So can you move into the hotel segment as well, or is that saturated in a different way?
I would say if you look at the hotel segment, they have a completely different need, and is very much driven by deals and real time offers and such. But what we are doing with guest experience management is ultimately building the CRM. So GXM is essentially the equivalent to a CRM, but built for hospitality, and that we are moving into other segments in the future to basically give them the same functionality that restaurants are using today.
Okay, so that is a viable option
For sure, yeah, for sure.
I'd just like to to dive for a minute into one of the things you've done in the past, which is a company called Trusting Alley.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so Trusting Ali was for people that knows the review platform, the Danish review platform called Trustpilot. It was essentially a copy of that for Alibaba, right? So a lot of people know AliExpress, but Alibaba.com is for the B2B segment. And what I noticed back then was, why can't you review any of these factories just like you review an e-commerce store, or you review a seller on AliExpress or on eBay or something like that? And I realized quickly that it was actually because they did not want you to review the factories. They had their own reviewing and scoring system, right? And I thought that was a bit problematic, because 8 out of 10 times I had ordered from that platform, I got like super bad quality, or got scammed or something like that. And I could read online that was the same case. So Trusting Ali was essentially solving that problem. It was allowing us to democratize reviews on factories, so that nobody would get scammed in the future again.
Is it still running?
It's not running anymore. Controversially enough, it was the site was put down 3-4 times, and in the end, I got a chance to close it, and I did that, and the rest is history. But I hope someone will pick that idea up and do it, because I think it's still important.
Definitely. So, what do you see for the future of digitalization of this industry, restaurant industry? Do you see things happening now, or is it still slow?
I would say if you look at our blog and our social media and so on, you can see that what we are talking a lot about is this new generation of restaurants, the new generation of chefs and employees in restaurants, right? Teams, essentially. We can definitely see a huge difference on who digitalized first, who is ready for change, who wants to take their business online and build a brand online and connect more with their guests, right? And the new generation is slowly becoming bigger and bigger, right? It's people who are used to and have grown up with technology. And those people are the ones that are accelerating digitalization for restaurants. And what we are doing is we're supporting them on that by giving them a platform that can actually do it in the right way. If you look at status quo, a lot have happened just the last 2-3 years. Where I believe it's going is it's only becoming better, especially because of COVID, right? Restaurants have found out that it's not enough anymore to just wait in your restaurant, and for guests, you need to do marketing. You need to engage with them on Instagram, on Facebook, on any platform that where you can make yourself relevant. And that ultimately, as a brand, as a chef, or you as a manager, or the restaurant as a whole, can attract guests to your restaurant. So I think we are going to see a lot of acceleration in how digital restaurants will be, and I think you're gonna see some kind of hybrid between online and in-store digitalization, right? How technology can elevate the experience when you're booking, but also when you are actually in the restaurant.
You also portray some of these interesting new chefs and entrepreneurs in your podcast, the Experience Matters podcast. Is that a way of highlighting these good examples from the industry?
It is spot on actually. So what we actually founded that podcast during the pandemic, and we wanted to create a forum where restaurateurs could learn from other restaurateurs, right? So we took the leaders that basically lead by example, to allow them to share their stories, and share their insights, about how to run a restaurant, how to be more digital, how to increase revenue, how to do upsells, and so on and so forth, right? And I have not spoken to one that didn't have an exciting story to tell, especially with their experience during the pandemic. It was quite interesting also to talk to so busy people that suddenly had nothing to do. It's a bit different, I would say.
Yeah. I usually ask, what is your best tip for making the world a better place in the future?
So, I mean, sustainability is very close to my heart, right? And sustainability doesn't only mean, saving the world in terms of nature and animals and so on, but it's a big part of it. But I do think that restaurateurs have a huge responsibility in terms of making their restaurants more and more sustainable, and I do think that guests will demand that more and more as they grow. I think there's also a big question about, we are talking about data here also before, and I think there's an ethical question towards companies like Superb and the restaurants on how they use information about their guests, right? Because it's easy to say that you're using data to personalize the experience, or giving guests a better dining experience and so on. But it really is important that you also show that the guests has access to the information, and there's full transparency, right? And I think as the world is becoming more and more connected, and we know we are going to get each other our information more and more exposed, I think it requires a responsibility to actually continue protecting that. And I think we come from a Nordic mindset. I mean, you know what I'm talking about, right? And I think we understand how important that is, right?
Yeah. Do you have a good reading tip or podcast tip?
So what I like to read is a blog called Exponential View. I really think that if I have to recommend one, I would tell people to go and check that out. It's from a guy called Azim Azar, and he also recently wrote a book actually called Exponential. It's talking a lot about how technology is leaving us behind, and I think that's an interesting aspect of how we can be more relevant as humans in contrast to technology, right? That I would recommend to everyone. What I also like to personally read a lot about is books about and podcasts also as well about humans and human nature, right? I think we can learn a lot about some of the secrets of human nature. I think there's obviously many books about that, but there's one that I would recommend, which is called The Laws of Human Nature, from his name is Robert Greene. And those things can teach anyone about everything, both people building technology and how to build it, but also and to be able to nudge people to do certain things, but also how to empower people, right? And how to master self-control and develop empathy and so on, right? So I think there's some good insights in those kind of books.
Yeah, and I should add that Azim Azar also has a podcast called Exponential View,
Yeah,
which is quite popular.
which is very interesting also. Yeah.
Together with Harvard Business Review. And where does your name come from, Zaedo Musa?
So I'm obviously born and raised in Denmark, in Copenhagen. But my ancestors are originally from Jordan in the Middle East.
Okay. Do you have any connection left to Jordan?
I would love to, but not that much, unfortunately. I'm probably 99% Danish and 1% Jordanese, but But I like to, I've been there many times. It's a beautiful country, and in general, the Middle East is a beautiful place. So I enjoy that a lot.
Who do you think I should interview in the podcast?
If you can get a hold of Azim Shah, I would love to hear that.
Yeah,
that would be amazing. I think he would. Maybe he would end up asking you the questions instead of you asking him the questions. I think he has a charismatic way of explaining and telling us about the future. But I think other than that, there is a few people that, at least within tech, that I would love to dig into. So one of them is actually David Sandstrom, the CMO of Klarna, which you might have stumbled into. I think he's a genius when it comes to building brand marketing. I think the journey that Klarna specifically is on board, and the noise they make and the way they make it is its power, right? They've really transformed that company into a global powerhouse in so short time. It's very impressive.
All right, so let's wrap things up.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Zaedo, for joining me here at Heja Framtiden.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much, Christian.
And check out superbexperience.com for more information about the services that you provide.
I recommend that too. Thank you so much.
I don't recommend it to you, but I recommend it to the listeners.
Yeah.
Hejaframtiden.se, that's where you can find all the information about the podcast and the projects that I'm doing here in Stockholm. Next time, we'll talk about something else. Thank you so much for listening.